Hi, Scott.
Hey, how are you?
You're the presenter for this, right?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. I'm going to make you a co-host,
Okay,
and that'll give you the ability to share your screen.
okay,
And if you want to go ahead and get set up, please feel free.
okay.
I'll be moderating your session. And do you have a preference about questions? Do you want me to just like stop you if there's a question in the chat, or do you want to kind of wait and pause and ask if there are any questions?
Yeah, feel free to stop me, if there's, anything emergent or, anything
Okay.
like that, that's fine with me.
Okay, and then if you don't hear anything, you can always pause every now and then and say, hey, are there any questions? And I could field those to you.
Okay. One question I have, do you want me to start from this camera view or do you want me to start with, my screen shared and my slides up?
It's totally your preference, but I probably would say just go ahead and put your slides up because you can still have your video on as well.
Okay.
And this session, I believe, goes until 2:50. And we'll want to we need to stop on time because there's a session after that.
That is fine by me. I'll actually probably go a little bit earlier than that.
Okay, great.
Um,
And I'll just want to remind folks to do the session feedback form um, before we end as well.
okay.
Where are you from, Scott?
Um, Virginia, Winchester, Virginia.
Is that where you're at now?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. This has really been, I don't know if you've listened to any of the other sessions for this conference, but we have like 900 people attending.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, don't be surprised if you have about 100 people in your session today.
Okay.
That seems to be the average.
Okay.
It's really been amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where in Colorado are you at?
I'm basically in Denver.
Okay.
Yeah. I work at Regis University.
So is this, because I do a lot of stuff with the Virginia Society for Technology and Education, VISTE. Is
Hmm.
this the Colorado equivalent of that?
Probably pretty close. You know, we are a consortium of a bunch of schools in the Rocky Mountain area.
Okay.
We do kind of go a little beyond Colorado into Wyoming as well.
Okay, so
Um,
more regional than statewide then?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty good span though. We have several institutions that are part of our consortium, and it's really a great group, honestly. And it's a mix between community colleges and private colleges like the one I'm at, four-year institutions as well.
Okay. Oh, I never thought I'd say this, but I actually miss my desk chair.
I know, right? Well, especially if you have a really nice ergonomic one. I know I do not have that at home, and I've been really like my shoulders are all crunchy and my neck is bothering me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have one of our porch chair cushions on this and a pillow for lumbar support and
Exactly. Yep, got to make those adjustments to be comfortable while we're
oh yeah.
working at home. I know I'm sitting here with a blanket on my lap. We have about 10 inches of snow outside my window, which is
Oh goodness.
not very pleasant for a spring day.
Well, I won't complain about it being like 32 this morning for my run then,
Oh my gosh.
because I'll take
I,
that over snow any day.
I totally don't go out the door when it's that cold. But like yesterday, it was like 55 degrees and I went for a walk. I mean, that's crazy Colorado for you. We have these like mood swings with weather.
Yeah, it's like that in Virginia. I mean, with everything this year, it's kind of weird because normally, in years past, it's gone from cold to like a week of spring and then hot. Um, and this year it looks like it's going to be mild and some rain. Yeah, and I fully expect it to be hot come May.
For those of you who are just entering, we will get started in just a few more minutes. So hang tight. All right. So I'm going to allow you, Scott, to introduce yourself.
Okay.
We have Scott Lewis here that's going to be presenting today. Just a reminder to everyone, I will post in the chat box the feedback evaluation form if you can take some time after the session to fill that out. It's also located at the top of the schedule as a link, and you can provide feedback for any of the sessions that you've attended thus far. And we definitely appreciate that feedback. So if you have a chance to do that. So without further ado, Scott, take it over. Google Expeditions.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Lewis, and I'm going to take a second. I'm going to actually cut out my video of myself just so I can save on a little bandwidth here. But I'm Scott Lewis. I'm an instructional technology coach in Frederick County, Virginia. We're situated in Winchester, Virginia, which is on the western side of the state. Right on the border of West Virginia and Maryland. We're at the head of the Shenandoah Valley, which, fun fact, was instrumental in the Civil War. You can follow me on Twitter at Scott Lewis ITC. And as we go further with this, at the end, if you still have any questions about how to use Google Expeditions and how to create your own Google Expedition, feel free to reach out to me. I have a video that I've compiled about the things that we're going to be going over today. If you do have access to multiple screens, go ahead and follow along and build an expedition along with me. So, as with everything else that has happened over the last month or two, my intent, my objective for this presentation has changed a little. At the beginning, I wanted to show everyone how you can be a consumer of Google Expeditions and show how people have used those in my school, but in not only in my school, but in the county as well. Unfortunately, most of my equipment and most of my video recordings I have of all of that are still in my office in my school, and we haven't had access to my school since early March. And it doesn't look like we're going to be going back into school or even allowed to enter the school for another month. So my apologies with that. So the learning objective has changed a little. We're going to learn how to create and guide your own Google Expedition using Tour Creator. And we're going to kind of look at that journey as to how you can do this in your school. But now that we're working remotely and teaching remotely, how can you leverage this technology in our current situation? Because on the face of it, looking at augmented reality and virtual reality and teaching remotely, those two don't usually mix, because you do need some consumption with that, and you do need devices. But I'm going to show you a way that you can have your students or your teachers creating stuff that students can view without devices. So although a nice VR headset or Google Cardboard or anything like that would make the experience even better, you can do it without it. So my agenda for this, we're going to look at what exactly is augmented reality, what is virtual reality, who can use Google Expeditions, what do you actually need. We're going to look at how to create your own, and I'm going to walk you through the steps of how to create your own. And then that change in the agenda at the end, what if I don't have equipment? Well, I'm going to show you how we can cross that bridge and be able to have our students creating, because when you get down to it, that's what we want. We want our students being creators rather than just consumers. So first off, I want to look at the differences between augmented reality and virtual reality. We aren't going to really touch on mixed reality. So we're going to look at this first one. So virtual reality is an immersive simulation of a 3D environment. So you're looking and you're you're dipping yourself into that environment that's all around you. And you're going to do that with a device. And with that device, that helps you center in that activity and really experience it in 3 dimensions. When you look at augmented reality, you're looking at superimposing images into the world around you. So the way I explain this to students is we're going to be popping things up out of the desk. By we, I mean the students are. We're not actually going to pop things out of the desk using augmented reality because unfortunately, we just don't have the technology to be able to do that. So we're going to spend most of our time, actually all of our time, with virtual reality today. But I wanted to give you a chance to understand those differences between the two. Now, if you look at mixed reality, that mixed reality is a mixture of the two, where you're merging real and virtual objects that you can interact with. Usually technology for that mixed reality is more expensive, more cumbersome, and has a higher learning curve, which is why for a beginner and an end user in most schools, you're going to stick with augmented reality or the virtual reality. So Google Expeditions and augmented reality and virtual reality is not just a history resource. Fair warning, I was a history teacher before I became an instructional technology coach. So my beginning experience with virtual reality was through history. As I've gotten more of a thirst for it and more experience with it, and as my role as an instructional technology coach, I've had to look at ways in which I could bring that to different content areas as well. So this is just a list that's not exhaustive, but just gives you an idea of the different things that you can do in these different content areas. So I've done Google Expeditions and some augmented reality and even a little mixed reality in science classes with cell structure. Math, there are some really great Google Expeditions that you can do that look at geometry and look at angles as students are looking at buildings. English, once we get into the actual creation of these Google Expeditions, this is really great for an English class to be able to do because you're looking at technical writing, you're looking at being able to describe things. So I think that's what makes this creation aspect so powerful for any content area, is the fact that you're not only just having students bring in pictures and bring in videos or audio, but you're having them write about it, you're having them describe it. So the learning that goes behind that creation becomes very important. It's a great way for them to demonstrate that mastery of that content because they have to explain it, they have to guide people through it. So what does this look like? When I first started bringing this out to teachers in my district, and even in my school, I had teachers saying, well, I can't do that. I teach this grade level, or I teach students with special needs. And my response is always, everyone can do this. So this is Expedition Greenwood Mill Elementary. So this was a 3-part experience that I did with a local elementary school. So these were 3rd graders. And this first set of pictures is their consumption stage. This is where I introduce them to what augmented reality and virtual reality is. So as you can see, this picture on the left side of the screen, you have 2 students with Google Cardboards. And right now I'm rolling into classes with devices, about 8 to 10 devices. So it's not a device per person. And I want to make that very clear. You don't have to have a device per student. in fact, it's almost more beneficial to have a device per 2 or per 3 students, because that way you get the students interacting with each other a little more and they're not just tied into that device. The students on this right-hand side working with the augmented reality, I gave them a little quest to be able to do, to figure out how to be able to hold the pyramid in the palm of their hands, or being able to interact with the Sphinx. So students being students, they actually they succeeded, and they succeeded very quickly with being able to do that. And this portion was an awesome experience. The second portion is the build phase. So this is where these third graders actually created their own Google expeditions. And this is the part that we're actually going to walk through and learn how to do itself, is that creation phase. With third graders, we had to structure it a little more. So we started out doing one together. So I modeled it for them and they worked along with me. And after we got that first scene together, they were able to create subsequent scenes after that. So the really awesome part was probably about 3 weeks before our school shifted to remote learning, these students had the opportunity to guide their expeditions. So I'm picturing these two students, because the one on the right actually went above and beyond the 3 scenes that we asked them to do, and she had 10 scenes. The one on the left had 7 scenes, and what you don't see is, you don't see the students all around them mesmerized by what they're doing. You also don't see their administrators and the county administrators that had come into this as well and were looking at this and equally mesmerized. It's the reaction that you get from students, whether they're elementary students, middle school students, high school students, or adults, is the same. The first time they put on glasses or their headsets, they're trying to touch things, they're exclaiming, they're laughing, they're shouting out, "Oh, this is awesome." So I think, for me, that's the best part of it, is seeing not only the aha moment, but just the abject joy and the glee in learning, but showing off their learning to other people. So that's elementary school. So I figured if third graders can do it, anybody can do it. So these are middle school students that were doing a similar thing. This was their consumption phase. Unfortunately, we didn't get to the build phase or the guide phase because March hit before we were able to get back and do that. So that's on tap for hopefully next year. Different set of middle school students looking at some augmented reality. And again, I wanted to show you all 3 levels here, and I wanted to really look at this set right here, because the set on the picture on the left and the picture on the right, these are ESL students. And what we began working with is, a way to really show community and to have, our ESL population be able to describe where they're from and show, what really described them. Basically being able to tell their own story virtually. So getting started, what do you actually need? You need 2 devices, bare minimum. You need 1 device to guide, and you need 1 device to join the expedition. You need Google Cardboard viewers. However, you can view them without them. But again, you want to make these experiences as immersive as you can. So the ability that these cardboard viewers give you if you're using phones is that ability to kind of block out the peripheral vision and really make it seem like you're immersing yourself in the expedition. So a couple things to consider, and these are all considerations that I discovered the hard way. Um, you have to have a stable Wi-Fi network, and the devices must all be on the same Wi-Fi. You have to look and make sure that student devices are allowed on the Wi-Fi. So at the beginning of the year in my district, student devices were able to access a secured Wi-Fi connection. We changed that because of the amount of bandwidth that we needed for Chromebooks. So with that change, that created a difference in bandwidth. So students weren't able to actually access the expeditions on their personal devices. So we had to look at, okay, now that they can't do that, what are we going to be able to do as a school or as a district to be able to give them that opportunity to do that? You also want to look at the number of devices. And again, if you have the money and you can get a device per student, and if average class sizes are about 30, awesome. The reality is that these devices are expensive, and you may not be able to get one per student. So one per student or one per two is great. One per three. I've done it with one per four, one per five. You just have to figure out a way to make it work. This app is also designed to run best with phones and headsets and tablets, not Chromebooks. And the reason for that is Google has designed this to be an immersive experience, and you can't have that immersive experience on a laptop or on a Chromebook. You need that tablet or that phone to be able to really get immersed in it. So you're not going to see an app to be able to run Google Expeditions on a Chromebook. So costs. You can go bare minimum and cheap, or you can go ultra expensive. And I have a little of both. So, fortunately, my director of technology has been great with me and has allowed me to spend some money along with my school. So I do have a class set of cardboard viewers. I do not have a class set of phones, though. Right now I have 9 phones, and all 9 of those phones have been donated. And actually a great suggestion for donations for phones, local PTA is a great place, but my phones actually came from district administrators that had received new iPhones and had turned their old ones in to the district. So I was able to get those phones, be able to use them in my technology lab. You can get a VR bundle from Best Buy, 15 devices around $10,000, so pretty steep for that. You can also look at VR headsets. I do have 5 Lenovo VR headsets. Again, those are pretty pricey. Right now, each Lenovo headset is about $200 per. So if you're looking at that route, you have to be really cost conscious. And actually, with the VR headsets, I found that those are actually very limited. I think that if you're going to invest in virtual reality and you want students to be able to create stuff, and you want them to do augmented reality and virtual reality, then the best platform is a phone platform. As you're getting into the mixed reality, you're going to spend more money because a lot of those devices have to be tethered to a laptop. So if you're looking at like the Oculus Rift, which is the higher end headset that's tethered to a laptop, you're looking at $1,000 plus for that. So those are a couple of the things about getting started. So we're going to get on to the create your own expedition. So I'm going to kind of go through these slides pretty quickly because we don't really need them. So I'm going to exit this real quick. And if you're following along on another device, if you want to go to, you can just do a simple search and go to Tour Creator. Or you can see the URL up in my top left corner here. It's arvr.google.com. So this is the platform where we're going to create the content. The second part of this is poly.google.com. This is the intermediate website that you need to be able to access to be able to get to the Google expeditions. So we're going to look here and we're going to go to Tour Creator and we're going to get started. So before I get into this, are there any questions right now on the getting started and that portion of it? All right, so let's get started then. Okay, so once you get in, this is your main landing page, and it'll show some of my more recent expeditions that I've created in here. Anything within the G Suite, that if you look for the plus sign, this is where you begin creating. So I'm going to click that, and this is going to bring up this main page right here, and this is basically the title page. Now, there are a couple things that you have to know before you can go in there, or actually be able to guide this expedition. Number one, it has to have a title. So I'm going to title it real quick. Number two, it has to have a cover photo. So with anything, it's connected to your drive. I'm using my laptop, so it won't take me directly into my Google Drive. If I'm using my Chromebook, which is what I usually use when I'm doing this, it'll take me directly into my drive. So I've already uploaded a couple pictures. These are pictures I got from Google, and they're both marked for copyright reuse. And that's a good thing to mention to students, is to filter that content so that pictures that they look up there are marked for reuse. So I'm going to click on this Sphinx one, and we're going to bring it in here. Now, one thing to remember, you really have to look at the resolution of the picture. Oftentimes, if it's larger resolution, it's not going to all fit into this box right here. So you can use a snipping tool or screen share to be able to kind of crop that picture to be able to get it in there. But for what we're using today, that's actually a really good picture to use. Second thing, or actually, excuse me, the third thing that you have to have is right here. You have to have a category. So I'm going to put it there in history. And the reason why you have those three things, it makes it searchable. Another good thing to look at is having a description here. Again, the more that you can describe this tool, the easier it is to search for. So now that I have those three things, my title, my picture, and my category, I'm going to hit create. So the awesome part about this is Google Expeditions and Tour Creator are fully integrated with Google Maps. If you've ever used Tour Builder is integrated with Google Maps as well. However, it's looking at two-dimensional pictures. What Tour Creator has done is it's looked at 360 and 180 degree pictures. So everything in here is crowdsourced. And so I'm going to search up here. I'm going to search for the Sphinx. And as you know, with anything like this, you have to be really specific, because if I were a student, I just typed in Sphinx, first place it's going to take me is to Sphinx Park, Colorado. And that's not where I want to go. So I'm going to go make it a little more specific. I'm going to go to the Sphinx in Egypt. So that changes these search parameters down here. And ooh, the Giza Desert, that's exactly where I want to go. So I'm going to click right there. So what you have right now is you have a picture on the right, and then you have, a map on the left. Now, I've done this a couple times with this particular Sphinx, or actually this particular scene. So I know what I'm looking for with this. So if you go and if you bring your cursor into the picture, and if you left click and hold and use your right hand, you can spin this around. So you can start looking at, okay, has it gotten me anywhere near where I want to go? And lo and behold, there's kind of the Sphinx. Now, if you don't have the view that you're looking for right over there, don't fear. If you go over here, you'll notice that you have this, basically, he's called Pegman, so it's a little figure right there. So if you left click and hold on him, you'll see all of these blue lines and blue dots. So this is all where people have crowdsourced pictures from. And so you can get a view from anywhere along here. So at some points, it's just basically kind of trial and error to get, good view of what you're looking for. Okay, so that's a better view. It's not great, but for what we're doing right now, that's kind of what we're gonna look at. Okay, so we have our scene right there, and what I find really interesting, or actually what students find really interesting, is that at any time they love looking for Western culture in a lot of these places, so they'll pick up right away on, oh, hey, there's a Pizza Hut or a Chick-fil-A or an Arby's or whatever. So I want to be able to get this as my first scene. So I found it right here. I've kind of shifted Pegman. If I were going to use this, I probably would look at something from the front, but in the interest of time, we're going to go to add scene. So again, this is where you get into, the nitty gritty of describing what you're looking at. And this is where you get into, the content specific writing and, the being able to demonstrate mastery. So I'm going to title this. And then a lot of times it'll give that location right here. But what becomes important is this description. This is, anytime you have a description, this is where students and teachers need to spend a majority of their time, because the awesome part about Google Expeditions is that you don't have to be an expert in what you're guiding. What you're relying on is somebody else has taken the time to become an expert in those areas. So before I go any further, look at questions here. So the add scene again, if you go down, usually subsequent scenes, you're going to see it right down here on the bottom. If you can't see it at the bottom, one thing I've learned is that sometimes you have to look at the resolution or the zoom that's happening. So usually when I'm doing this on my Chromebook, I'll have the zoom down to 80 to 90%, and that will shrink the size of the screen. So a couple things right here. I have the description. This is very important. You can also add audio. So if it's something that you'd love to have music playing in the background, or somebody making a speech or talking about something, you can do that. You can also add scene narration as well. So, again, if you have access to WeVideo or Screencastify or something that you can record sound, and that's something that you can put into this as well. If you look over here, you'll notice it says set starting view. So I always tell people that first view of a scene should be of the object, that focal object that you want them to be looking at. So it becomes really important here. So unfortunately, this is probably the best view that you're going to get of this picture here. But if I was going to set the starting view to something else, I'd click here with set starting view, and then you can rotate. So anytime you're rotating, it's a left click and hold, and then you're rotating with the right. So, you know, maybe if this wasn't about the Sphinx, instead it was about, you know, the Great Pyramid right there, you could set it here. Or if you wanted to start with the Sphinx and go to the Great Pyramid, start it right there. But you want to click save. Now, another thing to mention is that this, like most things in G Suite, this saves automatically. So if something happens and it kicks you out or boots you out of the system, it'll save automatically. So if you have ever done a Google expedition, you know that one of the cool things about it is that, you know, the person guiding can press a hotspot, and a person viewing that expedition will be taken to that hotspot or be shown where the hotspot is by a white arrow in there. So to create that hotspot, you go down here and you add a point of interest. So I'm going to click there. And this gives me, I call it the blue target. And I want my blue target here because I've already decided that one of the points of interest I'm going to have is the Great Pyramid. So I'm going to move this over here. Okay, so this is the Great Pyramid. And again, what's really cool is you can add some narration with this, but you can also add an image with this. And I find that if you add an image to some of these, it really makes that experience even better. So what I did was, this is a picture of the Pharaoh Khufu. And he was actually the pharaoh that was buried in the Great Pyramid. So usually you can manipulate this a little more and make it smaller, but for some reason it's not allowing me to. So what ends up happening is that once you click on the hotspot within your guide area, it'll show a white arrow, and students can then spin their chairs or look in the direction to be able to get to this point right there. So basically, that's creating a scene in a Google expedition. I always tell students that one scene is really not sufficient for a good expedition. You really need 3 to 5 and even upwards of 5. And multiple points of interest is always better within those scenes because, again, it shows you know, depth of knowledge, but it also makes it more interesting. So to be able to add multiple scenes, it's basically the same process. You go down here, you click add scene, and then it runs you back through that whole process of choosing that scene in a map. So at this point, do we have any questions?
There is one in the chat box.
Okay, so can you show add image one more time? Okay, so let me go back here. I'll go to this and let me remove that image. So to be able to do that, I'll just move it over here just because it's easier. You'll notice down here that it has this image icon down here, and you're going to click on that, and it's going to bring you up to this dialog box right here. So you're allowed to bring in a JPEG, a PNG file or a JPG file. So it's kind of limited with that. So you have to be cognizant of that. And then you're going to go to select an image. And what this does on my laptop, it takes me directly into my drive. And I've already set it up so I can go directly into the folder that I have with this. If it's on a Chromebook, I think a Chromebook is a little easier to use in this regard because you have the chance to be able to go directly into different parts of your drive, whether it's downloads, whether it's directly into your Google Drive. And so to be able to get that in there, all I'm going to do is double click on it and then add it. So yeah, one of the questions is, can you turn these in with Google Classroom? And the answer is yes, 100%. And I'll kind of show you that as we go through here. And actually, I'll show you in 1 second, because the final thing that we have to do to actually finish our creation of this is we have to publish this. So the default is public. What public means is that anybody in Google Expeditions that are looking for this, or actually, excuse me, anybody in Poly will be able to see this. So you want to be cognizant of that. When I do these, I have the students make them public, just because I had to create a different account to run my virtual reality devices. So it's a specific account for those devices. So for me to be able to discover them through this, it has to be public. If I went through as myself and I was going to guide them directly from this account right here, I would be able to see them. So depending on, actually, I didn't explain that well at all. If you created that that tour and you are going to guide it yourself, keep it private or unlisted right here. If you are creating this so your teacher can guide it, you need to make it public. So those are a couple of the considerations. If you are just going to turn this in and you have no intent of actually taking the next step and making it a Google Expedition, keep it private. Because what you're going to get next is, once you publish it, you are going to get a URL to that. So this is what students could then turn in on Google Classroom. Now, the cool part about this is that you can also view this tour, and this is where you can start looking at not really having to have devices. So once we had that guide phase with the third graders, we took the tour that the student was guiding and projected on the smartboard. That way the students that didn't have, you know, that immediate access to the virtual reality devices were able to interact or actually see that happening. And that's an important consideration, because you want students to be, you know, active participants in, you know, the lesson. So if you wanted to view it, you could go to view tour. Otherwise, you would hit done. So that's how you create a tour. The next part that I'm going to show you is how to search for it on Poly. And this is that intermediate step. Just because you've created a tour in Tour Creator doesn't mean that you're able to give it on Google Expeditions. I don't know exactly the reason behind that. Basically, it just is. So to be able to take that next step, all you have to do is go to Poly. And what Poly is I look at it as a clearinghouse or a curation of 3D objects that people have created. So this could be anything from 3D builds in Tinkercad to animations using Tilt Brush or anything else that people create in 3 dimensions. So you don't have to log in. I automatically get logged in here when I go in, but you would search for whatever you just did. Now, fair warning, sometimes it takes anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes to be able to actively search for and find the tour that you just created. So I'm going to search for that one that I found, knowing I'm probably not going to find it yet. So search for it right now. And yep, it's not up there yet. But never fear. I have one up here I did for another conference. So this is what you would look at right here. And I mentioned before how you have to look at screen resolution. If you see from this view right here, this thumbnail, you'll notice that the top of the Sphinx is cut off. And this just means that the screen resolution or the resolution on that picture was too big. So here's what you need to do. I'm gonna check the chat for 1 second. If you publish a tour as private, can you later change it to public? Yes, and vice versa. So, and that's the great thing about that. You can make that decision as you're going back through. So this is that intermediate step. So you notice down here that I have it liked right here. This is one of those steps. If you like it, it'll automatically take it and put it in your library on Google Expeditions. And an update that just happened within the last week is this share button right here. Before with share, you could send this via email or that kind of thing. You look here right now, you can, if you really want to, post on Twitter. But what's really awesome right here is that if you click on Expeditions, it will send it directly to your Google Expedition in your My Tours library. And this is the unfortunate part of this presentation right now, is that my intent was to do this presentation using one of my tablets that I guide expeditions on, and unfortunately that's in my office in my school, which I don't have access to until hopefully earlier than next year, but who knows. So what you would do next on here is, now it's ready to be guided in expeditions. So you could go into Google Expeditions on the device that you guide, access that app, and then you would look under, there are 3 tabs at the bottom. There's a Discover tab, there's a Library tab, and then there's a Classroom tab. And if you look in that center tab, which is Library, it'll give you 2 choices. You have your library, and you have just the regular library where you can download tours that have been created by someone else. The tours that you create end up going into your library. So that's the place that you would look at it from there. And at that point, you guide it just like you would another expedition. So this is kind of the end point of my presentation. And like I said before, I do have some video demos about how to go through all of these. And I believe in those videos, I've actually captured the steps at the end to be able to, what it looks like in Google Expeditions and how you would access those. So at this point, what questions do you guys have? I'm going to go up through. So does it take a lot of bandwidth to go on a tour? Yes. So depending on what the bandwidth is, I've tried to do this by using my personal cell phone as a hotspot, and I was able to guide and then have one student device on there. So yeah, it really, bandwidth becomes important, which, you know, if your districts or schools have a secured you know, network that you're able to get devices on, that's probably the route that I would take. That's actually what I have my cell devices on for VR, is on a secured network. Now, I also have a different situation because my VR headsets came with an access point. So I also run my phones through that access point now, which kind of brings me off of that secured network in terms of running, you know, the phones like that. What that access point does is allows me to securely get into, you know, the Wi-Fi network and be able to run things and connect things with that. So yeah, it does take a lot of bandwidth. And, you know, mostly, you know, that's due to, you know, a lot of, you know, the 360 pictures, but also, you know, just a lot of the data that's going back and forth with that. So again, just to clarify, make sure you understand that to guide students on expeditions, the devices have to be on the same Wi-Fi network, and that's why that becomes important, and which is why, you know, changes in district Wi-Fi policies become very important as well. So that was basically the long way around to say, yeah, it takes a lot of bandwidth. Yes, so students can do self-guided tours alone at home. What you can do is they can actually, you can view any tour on Google Expeditions through the app, and you can actually view it while you're in VR. So if they have access to Google Cardboard, that's awesome, but you can view it straight through the phone or the tablet. And that's actually a great way to do it. So if you know, as a teacher, have a bunch of different expeditions that, you know, you think would be really beneficial for the students, what you could do is just give them the keywords that they could search for them. Unfortunately, I can't think of a way that you may be able to pull the URL for those off of that. I'll have to check, because I think there may be a way that you can pull URLs and send the URLs to specific expeditions. So we have about, looks like 2 to 3 minutes left. So what other questions do you guys have?
Well, it seems pretty quiet. No
Yeah,
more
so
questions there.
I'm going to put my Twitter in the chat,
Oh,
and I'm
great.
also going to put my email in here.
Perfect. Scott, this has been really interesting. Thank you for sharing how to create a Google expedition.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, I would have loved to be able to show the end result of some of these and walk you guys through it. But, you know, again, if at any time, you know, any of you have any questions about, you know, virtual reality or how to, you know, access these, or even, you know, ways to approach a tech director or, you know, an influencer in your district about how to create this program, reach out to me. You know, I've been,
Great.
you know, pretty successful in being able to open doors in my district with this.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that contact info. All right. Well, we're going to stop the session if folks can remember to fill out a feedback form. It's at the top of the schedule. You can find the link to feedback. And thank you again, Scott. And we're going to
You're
conclude this
welcome. I
session.
enjoyed it.
Awesome.
All right.